Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood for YouTube, and this is my fourth time trying to upload any sort of video because I can't talk for whatever reason. Words. I'm here to do a read-along review to Benight, Beguile, Book 7, Chapter 1, Prayer for the Powerless. The cave at the North Shore Cliffs was a tinder box with rage over what had just occurred. A cavern filled with Welshport villagers, Lord family members, several tombs of the Dominion people, and the one empty coffin that everyone was promised would be that of the creature, the monster that was killing people all over town, the undead body of Sebastian Lord. Keep in mind, they suspect Sebastian doing this. Innocent till proven guilty, damn it. But this promise did not come true. Mayor Timothy Churchill's entire premise that he be the savior of the town he loved, a town his ancestors helped build, and eventually ceded ground in power and privilege to the much more influential lords, collapsed in front of his very eyes as the coffin lid slid open to reveal nothing. His anger began to grow. They had made him look like a fool. Where was the monster of Welshport? Where was Sebastian Lord? As the waves crashed against the rocks outside, pushing a cold, wet wind, chilling everyone to the bone, Matthew got up from the cave's cold, wet ground after being punched by a member of the village mob. He cracked his tight neck, fixed his torn clothes, and went over to Evie and pulled her from the grasp of the man who caught her as she fainted once Sebastian's coffin was revealed to be empty. Easy, the villager said. She's gentle, he added with a crooked-toothed grin that made the groggy Evie's skin crawl. You see, there's nothing here. You have nothing. Leave us alone and leave. You have desecrated a place where my people have come to rest. This is the place that my family, my ancestors of this island that had not been taken over by all of you, and now you bring this chaos here and disturb the hallowed ground. Leave, Matthew shouted angrily. Mary, too, began to feel her own anger burn inside of her. She was furious at everything that had happened. Jacob could see it building up in his ex-flame's eyes. The cruelty she had suffered for so long, the lies about her over the years, the decades she was out of her daughter's life, the betrayals, all because of Jacob, the misunderstandings, and so much time lost, and now this. Sebastian was her last resort to help save Philip. Her heartache and pain were about to explode. She could not control it. Watching her seethe, Jacob whispered to himself, Mary, no. This has to stop. Caspian suddenly spoke up as the mob continued to swell. We have all lost our minds. Look at what's happening here, he added as he released himself from the capture and walked toward the center of the cave. Not until we find and kill the beast the lords are hiding, Churchill growled. Mary's eyes narrowed and locked on to the vengeful mayor like an arrow headed towards a bullseye. No one would control what darkness was about to be unleashed. It came like the snap of a finger. 1 minute, sounds of waves from the sea crash outside the mouth of the giant cave. The next sounds of screaming echoed in the chamber. It was what Jacob feared. With all of the injustice, the cruelty she was witnessing, Mary's frustration, and the lack of finding Sebastian to help Philip fueled a fury in her no one had ever seen. A powerful beam of energy burst from deep inside her chest and lit up the inside of the cave like white lightning. Her eyes began to glow white, and the energy being blasted toward the mare. Caspian jumped in the way of the beam of powerful light, and it electrocuted him on the spot. Caspian fell to the ground, hitting his head on the ground, knocking him unconscious, his body shaking. Rebecca screamed and rushed over to her husband. Jacob ducked as Mary once again shot powerful beams from each of her 10 fingers toward Mayor Churchill, who jumped out of the way, and it hit his aide instead. People screamed and ducked as the beam of light blasted the walls of the cave, leaving rubble and burn marks all over. And Mary looked like a wild banshee, a woman set to destroy everyone and everything that had hurt her, and now taken her only chance at saving Philip away. She screamed into the air and began to float. Evie tried to reach for her, but missed. Her powers were too strong for even Mary to control. Light beams to burst from all over her body, and it was as if she were a bomb of supernatural energy that had been locked up for so long, and the tipping point, the unlocking of her powers, had finally come. It took the overwhelming feeling of losing it all for Mary to reveal how powerful she truly was. But as soon as it came on, the energy inside of her also drained Mary, and like the blowing out of a candle, Mary fell to the floor out of breath and weak. Jacob lunged toward her. Rebecca grabbed her son's hand as he passed her on the ground. We have to get Caspian to the hospital, Rebecca sobbed. Timothy stood up, dusted off his mare's sash with a shocked expression on his face. Everyone stared at Mary as Evie and Matthew rushed to her side to help her up. Mary, Evie said, unsure of what exactly she had just seen on Mary, but Evie knew this was not good. What the devil, Mayor Timothy Churchill whispered to himself. Murmurs from the crowd became louder, and the mix of crashing waves outside the mouth of the cave. Matthew grabbed Evie and Mary and stood in front of them, holding them back as the crowd continued to encircle them as their anger grew. Matthew felt the surge of fury staring at from the villagers, as if they were a pride of starving lions hunting and trapping prey, all the while trying to place together what had just happened. He's dead, a second of the mayor's aide said of the first as he searched for a pulse. We have to get out of here, Matthew whispered, pushing Evie and Mary further behind him as the circle of villagers tightened. Jacob, what should we do? Rebecca asked in a hushed tone. Caspian needs help. Jacob felt powerless and said nothing. You're not leaving this place on your own accord, Timothy said to Matthew. He then turned to the crowd and tried to regain his power over them and regain the notion of monster and creature all around them. People of Welshport Village, do you see now? Timothy shouted as he stood on a large boulder in the cave above the crowd and pointed toward Mary. Matthew and Evie. Sir, what are you doing? The second of the mayor's aides asked. I'll take care of this, Nathan, the mayor replied to him by name. The man is dead because of this woman's dark abilities. You all witnessed it for yourselves with your own eyes. The three were here to unlock a casket of a man we all believe dead. Why? Why would they do that? And yet, the casket lies empty. Where's the body? What ungodly thing have they done to Sebastian Lord's corpse? What sacrileges and horrifying event have we interrupted here on this night? What are these three creatures standing before you who are led by Mary Good? They're witches. They're all witches, he emphasized. The Mayor Churchill turned to the officers and shocked the group. Arrest them, arrest the witches. Then, like bees protecting their hive, the townspeople rushed the three and arrested them. They're going to jail. That morning, as the news of the events at the cave slowly seeped into public knowledge, Jonathan Deviney turned over on his giant cozy white sheeted bed. His new bride Jacqueline was nowhere to be found. He sat up and looked around their freshly decorated room, filled with new furniture and painted walls for their nuptials, and there was no sign of her. Jonathan got up and reached over for the silk maroon paisley robe and slipped it over his naked body. He felt the chill over the morning air rush over his skin like cold water on a summer day. As he opened the bottom door, there was Jacqueline, down the long red carpeted corridor, beginning to descend the giant main staircase. The mansion still a disaster from the mob's attack the night before. Jacqueline, he shouted. She froze. Her body sunk below the top of the stairs. Frustrated, she slowly walked back up. Good morning, sleepyhead, she said, now back at the top of the stairs. I'm off, she added. Off? Off where? It's before 8 in the morning, and it's still pretty dangerous out there. The villagers have daggers on each of us. Look around. They made a mess. I promised we'd help fix things up around here yet, he asked. I know, but don't you remember I said had errands in the morning to run this morning? How could you have forgot, she replied, lying. You never told me, and you had errands to run. I'll go with you. You shouldn't be alone out there. We'll have breakfast and I'll go with you, he added. No, go back to bed. I can handle things, she said. Handle what things, Jacqueline? May I remind you, you're having my child. I'd like to be around so that I can help you with anything. Please let me quickly get dressed and I'll be off with you, he replied, turning back into this room. Jacqueline knew her errands needed to be done by her and her alone. She did not need her new husband around spoiling all that she'd done the night before secretly. She lifted her hands as his back was turned and mouthed a quick spell that bounced from her lips into the air and onto his body like invisible rain. As her Latin words of reversal and change seeped into his mind, Jonathan suddenly felt a chill go up his spine and into his brain. A flash of white shot across his eyes, and a racer born from a witch's spell. Once again, he was bewitched by his wife to do what she wanted. He slowly turned back to her and said, Have a good day, love. I'll see you when you get home. She smiled, seeing her mind game still working, and quickly dashed down the staircase to her secret errand, passing a large cleaning crew who had come from the village to help fix up the mansion after the mob attack. Jane, the head maid, lifted a brow and stopped Jacqueline just before she left. Jane wondered, like many in the house, just what this new Mrs. Lord had in store for the family. She decided to implant herself. Were you off, ma'am? Shall I call Hampstead to drive you? What? Jacqueline asked, with one Hand on the doorbell. Oh, no, no, that won't be necessary. I can get there on foot. Ah, very well, ma'am. And where shall I tell Mr. Davinie you'll be, should be asked? Jane prodded. I spoke to him just now, Jane. You needn't involve yourself with any more information. It's fine, Jacqueline replied with a whip in her voice. Of course, ma'am. But the staff has been asked by Mr. Lord Castler to be careful out there now, that the villagers have started such a ruckus over the family. She wants to make sure we know where everyone is at all times, so it's my job to know. It won't make a difference now, ma'am. I won't tell anyone where you might be unless asked, Jane explained. I'm sure Rebecca has much more to worry about than where I am, Jacqueline hissed. Jane nodded. Yes, poor Miss Evie arrested as a witch. Imagine that. Of all the stupidest things, a witch. What's next? We'll be attacking letters on to women's bodies if they stray from their marriage. Nevertheless, if at least one person knows where you are, Mrs. Lord, then we can all feel safe. Jacqueline furrowed her brow at Jane's insistence. She needed to leave, and leave fast, but relented. I'll be at my old house, Lockwood Thicket. I have to pick up some things of mine. Just stay quiet, will you? Do you understand? I'll be home in an hour. Jane smiled and curtsied as Jacqueline made her exit, stupidly trusting the maid. Upstairs, Jonathan slowly walked back into his room. The spell suddenly began to fade in her haste to leave without him. Jacqueline was getting sloppy. Her spell did not hold. Past the time she left his sight, I sort of. I'll leave that question at the end. Actually, no. I sort of wonder, because she's with child, if her powers are fading because of childhood. If that's the deal here, I don't know. Because again, having a kid could take it out of you, so could take energy. It's very exhausting on a woman's body. He went to his bedroom window and watched her slip through the front gates of the mansion and into the woods. What are you up to? He asked himself. Jonathan quickly put on any clothes he could reach, his socks and shoes, a coat, and made his way out of his room, down the stairs, into the foyer, where Jane was standing watching the clean-up crew as they worked while she fluffed a giant banquet of fresh hydrangeas. They're all at the hospital, sir, Jane said as Jonathan was at the door trying to keep pace with Jacqueline, who just left. All of them, he asked. Yes, Mr. Castor was injured last night. They're all at the hospital keeping vigil. Oh, that is, except your new Miss Davinie is off to Lockwood Thicket. She had things to pick up. She said, Jane replied, delighted with job exposing the new Mrs. She went to the thicket, Jonathan asked. Jane nodded. Yes, sir. What things? He asked. Jane shrugged. Jonathan smiled, thanking her, and quickly went after Jacqueline, leaving Jane in the foyer with a list of things that needed repairs, and her mind squarely and gleefully on the mess she'd just made for Jacqueline. At the house on Belmore Beach, where Evie had finally placed roots thanks to the property being given as a gift from Rebecca, Aurora entered, exhausted from a long night at the hospital where she had said a difficult goodbye to the man she loved and the man who betrayed her and lied to her for months and months. The late Gregory Rains. Aurora hung her coat on the sleek white coat rack by the door and removed her gloves as she walked into the small parlor where she was surprised to see Caroline Taylor with the now 1.5-year-old Gabriel standing by the window watching the waves slap over the beach outside. Cora moved little Gabriel near the center of the room, uh, where he braced himself on the coffee table. She signed to him the word her grandmother and pointed to Aurora. Gabriel smiled and patted the top of the coffee table, happily recognizing his grandmother Aurora. Cora, what are you doing here? Aurora asked, rushing over to her grandson and scooping him up for a kiss and a hug. She signed to him the sign hello. Where are Evie and Matthew? She asked. Cora didn't know how to answer Aurora, but her expression told her something was horribly wrong. What is it, Cora? Tell me. Why are you here, and where is my daughter? Cora gulped and grabbed the morning newspaper. I don't even know how to explain any of this, Cora replied. Aurora, frustrated with Cora's caggy replies, put the baby down and snatched the paper from the governess's hand. Three arrested at North Shore Cliffs Caves. I like how he has the little article here. And three arrested. Suspects accused of bizarre occult rituals and witchcraft that caused death, injury, and attempted murder of Mayor Timothy Churchill. Arrestees Mary Good, Matthew Winterbourne, and Evie Jordan Lord taken into custody. What the hell is this witchcraft? Has this town gone completely insane? Aurora exclaimed. Should I call Dr. Jordan? Cora wondered, hoping Nick could help. Aurora didn't know how to begin to reply. Nick had spent all night at Ashia's bedside. After the fire, she'd been in a coma since almost being crushed by falling debris at the burning police station and had not regained consciousness. No, I have to get to the police station, Aurora said. It burned down, remember? Cora reminded her they're being held at a village hall in the area that was the old jail. Thank you. How did you know to come here for Gabriel? Aurora wondered as she began to make her way out. When the villagers came to Terramore, I escaped with the baby and came here. I've been here all night, Mrs. Jordan. I'm so sorry for what I've done, Cora said as she followed Aurora back to the front door. Aurora turned to Cora, confused as she put her coat back on. What you've done? You didn't arrest my child on this stupid suspicion of witchcraft or whatever they're talking about in the paper? Cora's stomach nodded. I think perhaps I did more than that. Aurora froze. What have you done? I was the one who told Baxter Murphy that Evie saw Sebastian the night she was freed from her coffin. You see, he and we are... Oh, Mrs. Jordan, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for all this, Cora explained. Why, Cora? Why would you do that? I don't know why, Cora began, as the tears fell down her peach-toned skin, reading her eyes and staining the top of her dress where they fell. Ever since we were children, he's been able to just convince me of doing things and making me feel as if I had to do something even when I knew it was wrong. I did it. I take responsibility. But he made it seem as if exposing something lords were hiding would make things better. But it's made things worse. Since you were children, make what better? And better for who? Aurora asked, as Cora's story still didn't make sense. He's my brother, Miss Jordan. Aurora's expression went from confused to shocked, to finally realizing what had gone on. He had you hired as at Terramore to spy. Aurora continued to cry and nodded her head. I can't believe you. You were trusted. Evie trusted you. We all trusted you, Aurora shouted as she stood in Cora's face, angry, hurt, and betrayed. But the mention of her daughter's name quickly changed Aurora's mindset. Evie, I don't have time for this. I have to get to Evie, Aurora added, as she looked back into the parlor where little Gabriel was playing on the floor with a stuffed toy. She worried leaving him with Cora, a woman who just confessed to being part of the scheme that caused this snowball effect of lies and confusion and death. But one thing was true in all this. Cora did truly love the little boy she had come to teach sign language. There was trust there, even if it was fractured. Don't leave, Aurora ordered. Stay with the baby and I'll be back. Is that clear? Aurora nodded, of course. So much was at stake, and now Cora's confession set off something in Aurora that temporarily took over from her own losses. Evie was in danger, and she had to be sure her beloved daughter was safe. Later that afternoon, as the cool breeze shifted over the trees on the small Silhouette Island named after the good family, 14-year-old Charlotte scurried around the cottage in frenzy, trying to get a meal ready for her little adopted brother Caleb, who had been left in her care by her mother Mary. Morgan, a young man of the same age who was staying with her, entered the front of the room with a concerned look on his face. Mary had gone on to the village in hope of finding Sebastian to finally put an end to Philip's liking as a werewolf. But she didn't. She hadn't returned. Charlotte was on autopilot, dealing with housework and the baby that she seemed to not even notice. Her mother, Mary, wasn't home, but she did notice. She forced herself to carry on, hoping Mary would return, pushing past all the worry about where Mary was. Morgan, however, had more on his mind. He saw something from his front bedroom window that just before coming out. Charlotte, he began before pausing, as if searching his mind for the right words to follow. Charlotte turned to him and tilted her head. She didn't need to use her power psychic abilities to see that what he saw from his bedroom window was bothering him. What is it? She asked. It's your father, he replied. But before Charlotte could inquire further, there was a knock at the cottage door. It's Jacob, Morgan said. I saw him coming, he added, feeling he had seen Jacob walking through the forest toward the cottage from his bedroom window. Charlotte grabbed a small towel to dry her hands before she slowly walked over to the door to see her father, a man she hadn't had contact with in months. A strange feeling of nervousness washed over her. She didn't fear Jacob. She knew she had much more on her side now that her powers were building. But still, the man who raised her was an overwhelming source of anxiety for Charlotte, who was under a constant fear that someday he'd do something to her again, like the time he locked her in a turret when he discovered her abilities. It was an unimaginable fear that he'd try and destroy her too, just as he did her mother Mary, her uncle David, her aunt Sabrina, and her cousin Sebastian. Anyone who'd get in his way, Charlotte recalled, was on his radar to remove. She straightened herself up. Morgan went over to little Caleb and picked him up, and then she opened the door. Jacob removed his black bowler and smiled warmly. Charlotte gulped. Father, what are you doing here? I need to come I needed to come to you as soon as I could before the news broke to you in a way that would not be helpful to anyone. It's about your mother." Charlotte felt her heart sink. Morgan, too. "What about her?" Morgan said from inside the room. Jacob pushed his way into the cottage. "Have the three of you been here all this time, alone?" he asked. "Just overnight. My mother went to Welshport. She had to," Charlotte shrugged to explain. "I know what she went to Welshport for. No need to try to sugarcoat anything. Come to me and explain," Jacob said as he turned to Morgan and Caleb. "Who's the child?" "Caleb. Mother and father adopted him. His birth mother died," Charlotte explained, walking over to Morgan and taking Caleb into her arms as if to protect him from Jacob's glare. Jacob felt a strange feeling now, too. He had not known of Mary and Philip's new child, only that Mary had lost her own child in a miscarriage. He looked at the baby close up in his daughter's arms and saw a familiar face looking back at him. Someone he knew, someone close to him, but he couldn't pin it. "The birth father?" he asked. Morgan shrugged. "We don't know." "What about my mother, Mary? What about my mother?" Charlotte replied, stepping back with Caleb from Jacob again, feeling as if she needed to protect the baby. Jacob lifted a brow. He had quickly forgotten why he'd come with the baby's presence. She was arrested last night, along with Matthew and Evie, at the coves below the North Shore cliff. The mayor and townspeople stormed Terramore and tore it to shreds, searching for Sebastian. Of all people, they quickly turned their sights on the coves, where your mother, Evie, and Matthew were searching for Sebastian, too. Evie hid his coffin there. They found him. They found his coffin, Morgan asked happily, remembering Mary needed Sebastian to save Philip. Jacob never turned to Morgan. "Yes and no. The coffin was empty. Your mother explained she needed to find Sebastian, but not as to why he was so important to help Philip," Morgan replied as Charlotte shushed him. "Philip, that's right," she said, "was responsible for the deaths on the dock. She said he was in trouble, ill even. She said she needed to find Sebastian, and that Sebastian was going to help him." "How? How is Sebastian supposed to help Philip if he's dead?" Jacob asked. Morgan and Charlotte once again shot each other looks. "He's not dead. Not like you think," his daughter replied. Jacob's face froze, realizing what they were saying, realizing that Celeste had failed, and that Jonathan did not take care of Sebastian like she promised he would months ago. To Jacob's horror, Sebastian was still in his vampire form somewhere. Dun dun dun. Somewhere. The world music. I see. Well, it seems we all have much more to contend with than I realize. Go on, the three of you, gather your things and come with me. I won't allow you to stay here alone, not in times like these. We don't want to go. We told Mary we'd stay put. She told us she'd be back," Morgan returned. "Morgan, you're not understanding. She's not coming back. The situation with her is much more dire than I can explain to you. The village has lost its mind. They're going to try her for—" Jacob paused. Then the words came to his lips when the Terramore Timothy Churchill accused Mary, Evie, and Jacob of being. "Try them for what?" Charlotte asked. For Jacob's pause, like it's an eternity. Jacob took a breath, realizing he was about to sound insane, repeating the arrest charge. "Witchcraft." Charlotte gasped. Morgan rushed over and grabbed Caleb from her arms as she almost dropped him. It felt like all the air had been let out of the room. The idea that her mother's true nature had been exposed to people that would not understand, to people who would condemn her this way for being what she was and trying to save everyone felt like a punch into her face. Charlotte understood that Mary's life, Evie, and Matthew's too, were in danger because of the destructive way the villagers and Timothy Churchill were about to handle the idea of a real-life witch among them. The revelation of the truth seemed unsurvivable. "Go pack," Jacob ordered again. They complied. Jacob looked around the small cottage that once belonged to Eliza Good. It was quaint, not like he remembered years ago. Mary had cleaned it up, made it less medieval in its appearance. There were cabinets in the kitchen, fresh rugs on the floor, earth that seemed to have been refurbished, and furniture that was reupholstered. Mary and made her life here with Philip and the children. Jacob found it admirable, sweet even. His heart had become cold to Mary for many years, but now, knowing that her life was on the line, he couldn't help but feel a small twinkle of guilt for his treatment of her, over the years. He turned toward a small photograph of her and Charlotte when Charlotte was only a few months old, that Rebecca had taken of her new grandchild and her mother. When Jacob destroyed his relationship with Mary and took custody of Charlotte, the photo had been only days old. It was all Mary was able to take of her. Jacob picked it up and smiled, remembering sweet young baby Charlotte. The damage is done, he whispered to himself about his actions. His guilt was plenty, but he knew there was no way back. Charlotte quickly gathered things for Caleb. Just after she packed her own bag, Morgan entered the small room where she was and tapped her shoulder. "Can we trust him?" he whispered. Charlotte was unsure. "I can never really tell when he's being sincere. I've never been able to read him the way I can others. My father is a wicked in the sense he has a knack for blocking me telepathically. I don't even think he knows he's doing it. It's just his nature," she explained. So we should just go with him? I don't want us to leave here. We can't trust him." Charlotte agreed, but she too knew that there was more at stake now. "We have to get to Welshport either way. We have to get to Fatima and to Sebastian now ourselves. My mother, Evie, Matthew are in trouble and can't get Philip help. Whatever happens, Philip must be changed back. This is the only way we can save everyone," Morgan agreed. Then the group wrapped themselves in the warm clothes and traveled the short distance through the little forest surrounding Good Cottage and to the small dock on the island where Aaron Hempstead was waiting on the Lord's personal boat. "Aurora," Charlotte said, Aaron, Charlotte said, rushing up to an old friend with a hug. "Miss Charlotte, very good to see you again," Aaron replied as he helped her in and took the baby from Caleb. "Home," Jacob ordered. Charlotte turned back to Good Island as it started to grow smaller in the distance and whispered to herself, "Home." Later that evening, the cold wind blew into the Welshport jail. Windows had been left open to air out the stench of stale smoke from the fire of the adjoining police station that had burned down the night before. In one of the 5 cells stood 3 accused of an arcade and bizarre accusations of witchcraft, and yet a true one. Mary, Evie, and Matthew shivered in the cold cell as Matthew stood at sliding bar door, hoping any of the police officers would come to them. No one had been there in hours, as they had all been out cleaning up the mess from the fire and the investigation. Everything had happened in the village park and at the coves. Mary sat in the corner out of the cell, crumbled in a ball, holding her legs to her chest with her face buried in her lap. Evie went over to her and put her arms around her. Mary, Evie said softly. Mary, what was that back there? Matthew turned to Mary and Evie. He knew what it was. He had seen that type of magic before. He had known its powers very well. He'd seen it in his sister, his mother, his grandmother, his aunts, his cousins. He'd seen it in himself as a child. Never ever gave into the urge to tap into the powers he inherited as a child, unlike his late sister Alice, who were revealed in them. You have to tell us what's going on. We saw something that I didn't think we could explain. If you don't help us understand, Evie added, still a soft tone. It's not easy to explain, Mary said, her head lifting slowly to show eyes swollen from crying. They're accusing us just as they are you, Matthew said. Whatever you tell us, you're safe. We're in this together. My mother was this, Mary said simply. This, Evie asked, already knowing the answer, but wanting Mary to say it. She was a woman with a great link to the world of supernatural powers. She had them. She always did. I always knew she did. When she died, they passed to me. When Matthew peeked again outside of the cage they were in to be sure no one was listening. He turned back to his cellmates. So it's true, he asked. Mary nodded, then sobbed into Evie's arms. Evie began to console her as she looked at Matthew, both of them knowing they'd be involved in several scenarios where they'd been close to someone who'd been of the world Mary inherited. Matthew's sister, Matthew himself, and of course Sebastian. Sebastian is what he is because of my mother, Evie. Please don't hate me. But when I shot Sebastian, he only came back the way he came back because of the spell my mother placed on him. It was the only way we could fix my wrong. The only way. I swear. It either he became one of the vampires or he'd stay dead. I never intended it to turn out in the worst way as it did, but it was the only way back. We used Philip's blood, his life source, and without Sebastian returning some of the back to Philip, he'll die. Philip will die and kill so many in the process. We have to get out of here. We have to find Sebastian and get Philip. We have to, Mary exclaimed. All right, everyone, let's just stay calm, Matthew said, seeing Mary beginning to spiral. We're going to do what we can to get out of this, but Evie began, but she couldn't say it. She didn't have the true answer on how they'd get to find their way out of such a situation. Jacob and Rebecca, they have to come through for us, Matthew said. They have all the money and power in the world. They wouldn't want the two mothers of Lord Grandchildren dragged into such a scandal. They've had enough scandal already with Baxter's articles. They'll come. They have to come. Rebecca seemed as if she wanted nothing to do with any of it. When they took her off to the hospital with Caspian, she'll blame me for whatever happens to him. Mary said, reminding them she injured Caspian in the cove. Still, Matthew's right. She'll always look out for number one, and that's the family's name, he reminded her. Maybe, in your case, Evie, you're a true lord, married and everything. I'm just Jacob's estranged child's mother, the daughter of Eliza Good. My mother and Rebecca have a very dark history. She won't save me. You two, maybe, but not me. I'm the guilty one. You're not going to be really charged with anything, Mary. This is insane. You were pressured to react. It cornered us. What you did was in self-defense, Matthew added. Someone died, Matthew. I can't be forgiven for that. Mary began reminding them of the events cove where her energy burst killed one of the mayor's aides. We still have the other issue at hand, he added. Sebastian, Mayor said. Where is he? When he saved me from the grave, he and I discussed that for the good of our family and for the good of this island, he'd remain in his coffin, safe and sound. We decided that we'd both been through enough, and it was time to put it all of the dark behind us. He was admitting that he'd stay there in the caves. He wanted to be sit there, stay away from harm and from harming people. Why would he go? Why would he leave without saying goodbye to Gabriel for me? Evie said. You're assuming he left on his own, Mary said. Evie turned to her, her mind quickly jumping on the notion. You know, Evie said. Now what? Matthew asked. Don't you? You know of her, Evie said. Mary nodded. She's in my coven, Jack, only as a witch, that I brought to Welshport to help with Caspian. She's gone out of control. And now I think she's taken Sebastian, Mary said. My God, he said. She won't stop until we're all dead. You two think Jacqueline took him? Why? Matthew asked. Two women almost answered at the exact same time. Same word, love. She'll do anything for it, Mary said. But Mary, we saw what you can do. Can't you just reverse all this? Time, space? Can't you save us? That would take care of Jacqueline stealing Sebastian and everything else that came before and after, even save Philip. No, I can't do that. I can't change what has come already. The way fate is laid out is the way it's supposed to be. A witch can't alter that timeline, Mary explained. Matthew walked over and tapped it with his finger. And this, he said. Matthew, no, Evie replied, knowing what he was thinking. If you could break out of the lock of the energy you could use at the cave, we'd probably be able to get out. We can't escape, Evie shouted. I have a child, Matthew. I can't risk myself by escaping jail. They'll hunt us down. Mary tried anyway. She lifted her hand and closed her eyes and whispered to herself to bring the powers from inside of her spell expel out like fire, just as she did. The cave hopefully break the lock. But nothing happened. I don't understand, Mary said. Can't do it, Evie said. As the realization of Mary's powers mysteriously vanishing, they began to hear footsteps coming back. To the close up jailhouse, keys were rattled. Voices of police officers could be heard. I just want to go back to my children, Mary said tearfully. Evie rushed over and held her. Matthew stood in front of them to shield them from whatever was about to come through. Was it more of the mob to come for their lives? Was it jailers who'd play judge, jury, and execution? Mary and Evie braced themselves for anguish and death. They could feel the fear burning in their veins, and the frightening breath, death slowly creeping around the exposed skin of their neck. When the door finally opened, four young police officers entered and paid them no attention, except for one who came over and slipped meals into their cell. bread, water. Keep your strength up, the police officer said, with a stained tooth grin. You're going to need it. The darkness of the late summer night fell over Welshport like a blanket. Over a canary's cage lulling the small island world to sleep, off in the Terramore forest inside of a small cottage known as Lockwood Thicket. Jacqueline Gray wrapped a thicket, dark brown, strained of her own hair around a burlap doll stuffed with corn husks that had yellow yarn hair and tiny black dress. Unevenly stitched together, but perfectly lifted to the little body. With all her own hair, she twisted and knotted it around the body of the doll, was tightening as she went along, causing a powerful invisible force that stretched from the thicket all over the jailhouse in the village. The doll was a Mary Good. Jacqueline had bound her powers so she could not use them to save herself. Jacqueline continued to tightly bind her little voodoo Mary until she heard something outside the thicket walls, a rattling in the bushes, branches cracking underfoot. Jacqueline quickly tossed the the voodoo Mary, into the drawer and dashed into the front room from the main bedroom that was down a separate hallway from the second bedroom of the cottage. When she entered the front room, the cottage's front door had been left open. Someone was inside. Jacqueline panicked. She was so busy binding Mary's powers, her own instincts and senses had not caught intruder as they lurked around the cottage. Jacqueline quickly knew she had to check on her most important asset. As she did, she heard a loud crash from inside a small bedroom where this asset was being held. She quickly made her way down the hall to a small cottage and pushed open the closed door to a side bedroom that she knew she had left open. When she opened the door, Jacqueline saw that a table had been turned over. One of its legs had been broken off, causing the crash. She heard, and standing there with a broken off table leg in his hand, with her new husband, was Jonathan Deviney, standing over Sebastian's paralyzed like body and the bed draped in black. Jonathan had followed his witch wife to her most secret hiding place, the home she shared at one time with her true love, Sebastian Lord. In Jonathan's hands, a broken leg table with a sharpened raised and above his head, preparing to be plunged into the vampire's sleeping chest. "Stop!" Jacqueline screamed at Jonathan's stiff arms began to drop into Sebastian's sleeping chest. All of Jacqueline's work was about to evaporate before her eyes. She had secretly followed Mary to Belmore Beach and overheard Evie tell Mary where Sebastian's coffin was hiding. Jacqueline nearly missed the entire confrontation between Mary, Evie, and Matthew and the townspeople, and had secretly removed Sebastian's sleeping body from his coffin and transported him by magic to the cottage at the Lockwood Thicket. Sebastian lay there as if a stone statue, waiting for the hour where he'd finally sense he was not in a coffin and wake to feed. His skin was a perfect tone of alabaster. His hair combed and fine as strands of golden brown thread. His lips turning pinker by the moment as she was about to wake. Jonathan turned to the woman he married, and with shocked, horrified, panicked look in his face, and as a stake in his hand towards above his head, towered above his head. Then, without even saying a word, Jonathan dropped the stake towards Sebastian's chest. Jacqueline screamed and lifted her hands out in front of her. A powerful energy shot from her palm, shocking Jonathan's whole body into a frozen statue. Stayed only inches from Sebastian's chest. Then Sebastian's eyes flipped open. He hissed like a devilish cat, began to levitate from the mattress without bending his body, as his feet were anchored to the edge of the board. Then in a flash he shot across the room into a shadowy corner void of candlelight. Jacqueline slowly walked toward where Sebastian went. She could hear him breathing and sense his energy, but she could not see him. She grabbed a candle from a table and she walked closer and closer. Two golden eyes began to flow from the cold, dark corner of the room. Jacqueline gasped and froze in place. "What have you done, witch?" His voice said from the shadowy corner of the bedroom. "What have you done?" In the shadows outside of Lockwood Thicket, in the Terramore Forest, three veiled figures appeared in the mist and fog in the night beneath the trees in the glow of the pale moon's light. Three faces obscured, blackened by the layers of the cloth over their face. Here, this is the place such perils of our kind coven. The center figure spoke. A cold wind blew their cloaks that made them seem to float. "Much danger approaches this island," the second figure said. "Much danger approaches this place," said the third, pointing to Lockwood Thicket. "How shall we proceed?" the second figure asked the first. "A dark wave comes, but the only sea by the punishment of something even darker than the sea at night. It's there in the thicket now," the first said. The other two prepared and pointed. "It's there. Let the witch find her way," the first spoke. "Let the witch have her say," the second continued. "Let the witch see another day," the third said. Then together, "Let the witch known as Jacqueline Gray find her way, have her say. Say the day, but if she could fail and betray, we as coven guards shall make her pay." So you got some coven witches after Jacqueline. So this is more of the coven of the witches that Mary's mother is a part of, Mary is a part of, and Jacqueline is a part of. So very, very interesting to see where this is going to go. You have three people who are going to stand trial for witchcraft. Mary is obviously a witch, but you also have the guy that Evie's dating. He has witch-like powers. I say warlock, but it could be like a male witch, I guess. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. This is really, really good. Link to Benight and Beguile is going to be in the description box. Go check it out if you haven't already. Have a good day. Bye.